So pleased to have at the table John E. Scofield. E is important because there's a lot of probably John Scofields.
Well, the most terrible thing that's happened to me in my life is the advent of the internet, because if you Google John Scofield, you get the loud jazz guitar player. Instead, you get 800,000 things of him and 6 things of me.
All right, well, we got to get, so now we're going to have an interview with you. We should say you're a designer and a craftsman, and we've got some maquettes in front of us that we're going to talk about in a second. For people who think they want to be an artist, a designer, a craftsman, where did this come from? Do we have to go back to your childhood?
Yeah, I think it comes from the same place for everybody, no matter whether they're whether it's Norman Rockwell or an abstract painter or you and me out in the garage. You look at something and you don't come up with an idea because you're so happy when you wake up in the morning. You're deeply dissatisfied with something that's in front of you or something that's in your mind, and you say, damn it, I think I can make it better by doing this, this, and this.
So you're your own worst critic all the time.
Yeah, I think so.
Where did designing start? Let's go back in a young career of Johnny Scofield, okay?
Well, when I was a teenager, I went to work for a little tiny industrial design outfit in Coscob called, run by Ian Tessar. And we were doing all of the plastic covers for the Pitney Bowes machines. And you made them up out of any kind of junk you could get your hands on in the shop, of styrene plastic and blocks of wood and auto putty for bodies, and you just put it all together and you generated your shape.
How old are you when you're doing this?
I guess I was 18.
Okay, 18.
Yeah.
Did this start to formulate the things that you did later in life?
Oh yeah, very much so. And even before that, when I was 16, I met a wonderful guy, an architect named Walter H. Killam Jr., and he was the youngest architect to work on Rockefeller Center during the Depression. Well, one of his daughters brought me home for dinner from high school, and so we walked from school to their house, and Walter came off the train and showed up, and we said hello, and he said, would you like to come down to the basement and see the workshop? And I said, yeah, of course. So we went down there, and he had cornucopia of band saws and table saws and planers and racks of wood that he had milled in his own sawmill in Cornwall, Connecticut. And by the time we got back upstairs again for spaghetti dinner, I thought to myself, this guy is too good to blow on a girl. I'm sticking with Walter. And by God, he taught me how to use all of that stuff, and I ended up going a few years later, going to RIT when I was 20 and studying furniture design. So that's kind of, in a nutshell, that's where it all came from.
Then you end up at Bard.
Well, I teach, I went to RIT in Rochester and studied furniture design, but many years later, starting in '95, I started teaching a seminar, or assistant teaching a seminar in ancient furniture, and having a workshop kind of a thing on 18 West 86th Street in New York. And all the students are all these incredibly bright kids who are going to end up working in museums and other institutions all over the world. And this might be the last time that they ever actually do a hands-on thing with a piece of wood. So I'll bring in 15 samples of woods that were used in the ancient world, and I'll make them put one in a glass of water, put another one...
To see what wood does.
Yeah, put another one over on the windowsill and cover half of it with a piece of paper and let it sit there for 2 weeks. Pick up a piece of pine and have them macerated by chewing on it, seeing what the density is and all that kind of thing. So that's how we sort of tie the visual discussion of ancient furniture stylistically with the reality of the material. Did this walnut come from Siberia? How did it get down there? How come all the ancient Egyptian stuff is just hemlock? Well, on Crete, all they had was hemlock. So the slaves rode the ship towing logs across back to Egypt.
So if we describe you now, you're a craftsman, a designer, a furniture maker, and we have these little maquettes of things that you've built in bigger forms.
Yeah.
What is it about working with wood that you just love?
Well, you know, there's a sensuousness to it. It's like, you know, a lot of artists love watercolor because it's like the tactile quality of the paper and the way the pigment flows over it when it's wet and all of that stuff. My grandmother was a Rockwell, and she was distantly related to Norman.
Really?
When Granddaddy died in '52, she used to go up there and spend a lot of weekends with them in Massachusetts.
So Norman Rockwell is in your family?
Yeah.
Well, how awesome is that?
Yeah, I don't know.
Jeez. All right,
and so she taught me watercolor when I was, you know, I don't
nobody
know,
better
10
than
or
him.
11 years old.
Nobody better than him. All right, let's look at some of the things that you've designed.
Sure.
What is this, John?
Okay, this is a dining table with every edge on this thing is a curve. There are no straight lines. And this maquette is made out of bird's eye maple. You can see all the little
beautiful
dots
wood
on the thing, which kind of gives it a nice sense of scale. And I hollow out the bottom to make it extremely light.
And have you made this in real life size yet?
I haven't. This is one that I have made.
Okay.
It's this one's made out of pear wood. Pear wood, when you're carving pear wood, it's like carving butter. It's just the loveliest thing. And if you go to Paris and you see all of the, you know, when you enter the metro in Paris, there's the curly Q swirly things made out of cast iron. Well, that was Hector Guimard, and he did furniture too, swirly furniture. So if you look at all of his Art Nouveau furniture was made out of pear wood. And once you carve it, you know why, because it's just heaven.
Now, you have made this table, and there's a painting on it, and it was very expensive.
Yeah, a little bit. This has a cartoon of a night sky painted on it, and it was a doctor in Bethesda, Maryland, asked me to make it full size, you know, to seat 8 people for their dining room, and the final real piece, you know, was regular height like this, and really can seat 10 if you really squeeze them together, and the painting has the Milky Way going across it with over 1,000 stars in it and all kinds of wonderful.
So he did it up.
Yeah, wonderful stuff in the sky.
This seems pretty plain, but is it? Not really. I mean, it's got some depth to it.
Yeah, that's kind of like a, you know, quality of a shaker thing. It's square and not very
Do these come to you in your
exciting.
woodworking shop at night? I love to build tables and chairs and benches. You'll just go down there and kind of build a maquette and then hope somebody buys it in a bigger size, right?
And so I have all these IKEA racks, these cubes with dozens of little cubbies. And so when I finish these things, I stick them in the cubbies. And then my wife, Bartley, is an interior designer. She's constantly moving them around so that we have a different show
every time somebody comes over. All right, this is an interesting story. These are benches which really do exist somewhere, correct?
Well, yeah. I've actually made this piece. It started out with a rough idea of a horse, and I have daydreams about colors. And
I do too, but I can't put them into anything. But so good for you.
Well, the way I call it the equestrian bench, and the way it started was, I wanted to do something that had to do with animals and people, and how you have a surface that's like skin, and it has all the imperfections on it that occurred in various accidents in your life, falling out of a tree when you were a kid.
This is deep, John, very deep.
And all this kind of thing. So I have daydreams like this, and I wanted to do something that had to do with the flesh, and somewhere between people and animals. And so I came up with this shape first. So there's the horse's head, a little bit abstracted.
And it's not flat. There's a lot going on, which may not be comfortable to sit on,
well,
right?
Yeah, no, which in this case, in this quickie carving, would not be comfortable.
But then it became
I was
this.
very dissatisfied with this.
But we're more satisfied with this one?
Yeah, so I had to refine it a little bit. So this is made out of cedar. It weighs nothing. This is made out of rock maple. It weighs a ton. And so I refined the shapes and everything and the proportions of it a little bit more, and did sketches of the legs on the end, and I went to a stable and sketched a small thoroughbred that was owned by Nan Kempner, and I did a whole bunch of full-size sketches in the stable of Nan's horse, and then I brought it all back to my studio in Portchester, New York, and did full-size sketches of this, and got it to the point where it was buildable. Then I made it out of about 50 different pieces of mahogany.
Wow. And this took how long?
Oh, about 2 months.
That's a long time.
And maybe $1,000 worth of materials.
Oh my gosh. All right, this is interesting. What is this one, John?
Well, sometimes you start thinking, well, I do paintings all the time too. And
are you never not creating?
Rarely.
Okay. All right.
And so when we went out to the Navajo reservation, I brought some tools with me in the back of the truck, and I made a bench while we were out there. This is just, it's thinking out loud.
Right. Which is awesome.
That's all it is.
Right. And then somebody might have you build it.
Yeah, and it's an excuse to put 4 colors together with certain shapes and see if it works.
What has made you pretty famous? This guy that you studied with, Robert Motherwell?
Well, before working for Bob Motherwell, I had a Tiffany Foundation grant to work with an upstate furniture artist named Wendell Castle. He's considered the granddaddy of the thing now. He's in his 80s and still working like mad. And so he and I together, I was his only employee. We made about 100 of his pieces over a period of about 2.5 years. The last year of which was under the Tiffany grant. And I lived in my truck out on the back by the railroad tracks.
I'm trying to picture that. Okay, I got it.
To save money. And we did a lot of work. And he had a lot of artist friends. The place was hopping. For being near Rochester, New York, it was pretty extraordinary. And he's an amazing guy. Learned a lot from him. And then when the grant was over, just by a crazy chance thing, I met Robert Motherwell, and he invited me up to his house for a drink.
Describe him for folks who don't know who he is.
Well, Bob Motherwell was one of the original, or what they call nowadays, the first generation of the abstract expressionists. Jackson Pollock, Rothko, de Kooning, maybe about a dozen, 15 people in all, and they took all the European surrealists had to get out of Europe, and they ended up in New York. And so there were all these kind of random painters in New York, and they banged into the surrealists, and the next thing you knew, they were all doing abstract work. And they were kind of mining the subconscious. They were talking about Jung and Freud, and how do you take feelings you don't even know you have and express them? And, is it real? They didn't even know. They couldn't even give their paintings away.
And you end up in the middle of this.
Well, this was in the 40s and early 50s.
Right, I'm not going to age you too much.
And so now here we are. I was born in 50. So here we are in 73, and I meet Bob Motherwell, and there were only, out of all of the original AbX people, there were only 3 of them left. And one of them had Alzheimer's, and the other was a crazy recluse. And then there was Bob, who was totally sober, not drinking anything, very active, doing the best work of his life, about my age. And he bought a chair from me, and we kind of hit it off. And the next thing I knew, he called me up and said, "Would you come to work for me?" So I worked for him for 3 years.
And you learned everything that made you the famous person that you are now.
Well, I don't know about that.
I mean, you have Norman Rockwell in your family. I'm just saying. So you have some pieces in the Modern Museum of Art. What is that like to have a piece there?
Well, it's a music stand that I designed in 1971, and it sat in the closet for 10 years, and then it won an international award with the Progressive Architecture magazine. and it got exhibited and published all over the world, all, you know, instantly, as that whole world works. And
what was it about this stand?
well, it's just a very simple, slender bunch of sticks that all folds together into a bundle, and it had one curved leg to make it work. And it's the kind of thing, you can only design a thing like this when you have no family, no mortgage, no kids, and you can just live and breathe something for a few weeks, and not even go to classes. You know, you just focus on one thing. And so I did, and I didn't think all that much of it, and sat in the closet for a long time. It won the award with PA, and the next thing I knew, it was getting a ton of attention. And so a friend said, why don't you submit it to MoMA? And I did. And a couple of years later, they accepted it, and Philip Johnson signed off on it, and all these other big shots.
Have you sold a bunch of them?
Yeah, about 100, yeah.
So this is a good thing.
Yeah, so it's a big thing. That, getting into that collection is something that people will kill to do. And I didn't realize at the time what a big deal it was, but I will tell you that within 60 days, I found out really fast what this is all about, because within 60 days of that piece going up on display in the late 80s, I had 50,000 in deposits on new furniture, pieces like this, not music
because
stands.
you were at MoMA,
yes.
right?
People look at you in a totally different way. It's like yesterday you were Joe Schmo, and now you're up there with the stars. And it may not be right, but it's the way it works.
All right, so Bob Motherwell taught you a lot. What are you leaving behind to teach others?
That's the key thing. I think that when we really learn something from someone, whether it's our grandmother or, you know, a business person or an artist or a newscaster, whoever you're involved with, when you really learn something from them, it's an apprenticeship. And it may only last for one day, it may last for 10 years, it could be anything. But you pick up key things and you say, damn it, you know, I've always suspected that was the clue, you know, that this person has to give me, to show, not handing you the path on a platter, but giving you this much of a clue as to which way you should go with your life. And then you have to have the, I don't know, the serendipity to follow that. And that's how things happen in this world. You got to have that vision, you got to have the drive to make it happen, and and you got to have that dissatisfaction with what already exists to begin with, to give you that initial shove.
John E. Scofield, thank you so much for coming in and giving us a lesson in art and design and furniture making.
Well, thanks very much, Ian. This has been a great pleasure.
You betcha.
Pursuits when one they sin. Who's this girl? Spend all night kissing, and the bumper's right here. Then who else is missing? Got a little sidetracked if I'm so wishing to find the keys to the door, but it's also a metaphor. Need to keep locked in the grocery store of my mind just to save time. I'll skip right ahead to the last ride. The harder we